Welcome, welcome, welcome to another episode of Creatives Corner. My name is James Dale, and I'm here with Kate Anderson. How are you doing, Kate Anderson?
I'm great. Thank you so much, James.
That's great. That's good to hear. We are all blessed here in God's world, and we are trying to do our best and our darndest to be the best versions of ourselves. Kay Anderson here. She is from a small town from Colorado, who grew up with the San Isabel National Forest as her backyard, which inspires most of her stories to date. She writes sci-fi, fantasy, and LGBTQ themed works. Currently, Kay Anderson is working on her novel, a trilogy titled In the Shadow of Fate, and has several published works, short stories, and flash fiction works floating about the web. Kay Anderson graduated from Full Sail University with a BFA in creative writing in 2023 and has been writing since 2012. Outside of reading and writing, she enjoys spending time with her friends, family, and her cat. My first question is, what's your cat's name?
Corin, and she's actually sitting in.
Oh, there we go. That she's going to be the star of the show.
Oh, 100%. No, she'll probably chill out and just sit here until I'm ready to give her her dinner.
Okay. Other than the Shadow of Faith trilogy, have you published any other novels?
No other novels, just the first two books in that trilogy.
Okay. What genre of writing do you prefer to write?
Honestly, it depends a lot on my mood. Like, obviously, the sci-fi is a big thing, but I've been taking a break from writing the third book to do more fantasy stuff because that's just been my mood lately. But I love that, love adventure, a little bit of romance, all that kind of stuff.
So you mentioned that the park is in your backyard. Do you generally go out to the park and just sit down with a notepad and just write what you see, or you just wake up out of your in the morning and look out your window and say, "Okay, I got a story."
Well, growing up, so the San Isabel National Forest is huge. It's just the wilderness, and it was right in my backyard. I don't live there anymore. I'm still in Colorado. But yeah, a lot of that view was what inspired me. We didn't have, internet or cell phone service out there. So all the time it would be like, well, I have a free day. I'm going to hike back into the mountains and find a creek or just a nice little spot to hang out in the sunshine. So
Okay. Other than the wilderness, what inspires you to write? What is your motivation? Who is your muse?
definitely real life.
Mhm.
I was a huge reader. I still am, but especially when I was younger. And I remember a lot of times reading those young adult books and getting really frustrated with the protagonists, especially, if there was like that dreaded love triangle, because to me it was always so decisive. I was like, no, no,
Mhm.
no, you love him. This is the
Mhm.
one.
Mhm.
Um, so kind of just my real life interactions. I mean, I love to people watch, which can be a little creepy, but but just picking up little ticks and personality characteristics from the world and people around me. And then other than that, it's pure imagination.
Okay, that's great. So do you remember what your first published piece was?
Ooh, um, wow, that would have been a long time ago. I don't even know how to find it. But when I was, I think 13, I wrote a poem and published it on DeviantArt. And that's
Okay.
back when that was like the big art hub. And then a magazine contacted me and asked if they could publish it. I'm trying to remember what the magazine was called. I'd have to look it up, but they pulled it and published it, and they had someone do illustrations for it. And
Mhm.
after that, it was just like, all right.
So did you frame that publication? Do you have it somewhere? Do you say, okay, this is my first piece, like Scrooge McDuck and his number one dime?
That should have been how it was, but it wasn't. I was just like, oh, okay, cool. And I remember my parents even being like, no, you don't understand. Like, this is a huge deal.
It is.
And I just didn't really get it. Because I didn't really have to try for it. I didn't have to submit it or anything. And now that I'm an adult and everything is hard and I have to try for things, I wish I would have framed it and kept my first ever publication.
Yeah, do you remember the poem?
Um, oof, I don't think I do.
Okay.
Um, just your average teenage angsty love poem, I'm sure.
If you can find it, we're gonna put it on the station so people could read it. We're definitely gonna do that for you. And if you can give us a sound bite, we'll get it out there also, because what I'm trying to do is to motivate people who are creatives that don't know what kind of avenue or platforms to go about showcasing their talent. So it's individuals like yourself who is a professional writer, who is out there and expressing themselves to try to motivate the people out there in the world who, necessarily don't have a way to express themselves or know how to get to other people. So these kind of interactions is great for people, because a lot of individuals out there, um, I can't say myself included, but a lot of people out there, they live a mundane life, like Neo from the Matrix, and they go along about their day. And sometimes they go home and they play the violin, or they doodle, or they paint, and they don't necessarily know how to get it out there. So I want people to know that there is a way to get their stuff out there. And if you apply yourself, we can all be creatives. You are a creative. Be a creative. Don't be a banker. Don't be a police officer. Be a creative. You want to dance, dance. There's ways out there to do what you want to do, to express yourself. And I believe the world would be a better place if we all do what we love to do. Nobody will work a day in their lives if we do what we all love to do.
Definitely. I do have my first piece that I got published when I started my creative writing degree, and
Mhm.
that was called Skins, and it was a flash fiction piece, and that got published to the Cabinet of Heed.
Mhm.
And that was one of the first ones that I really tried on. Like when I finished writing it and I got feedback from my professors and they said, like, you should submit this, you should try to get this published somewhere.
Mhm.
So I'm really proud of that one, and I'd be happy to send you the link over for that. And I do have a recording of me reading it actually, so I could do that for you.
Sure,
Um,
we do that.
Perfect. All
Yeah,
right.
yeah, and I do remember, such as yourself, a first piece when I was in college. We literally had back in 98, 99. I wrote a poem titled "A Beautiful Rose," and they had something called poetry.com, and I submitted that into that piece, and I got emails and phone calls from people from poetry.com, and I got it published with poetry.com. So that kind of nudged me in the direction of, I can do this, I can be a professional writer. So it was that piece. And when I was um, my freshman year in college, I have an older brother who was a musician, and he had a group, a band, and they heard one of my recordings that I did with one of my buddies, and they said, you should record with us. So I did that, and that was an experience. We did a couple of shows. So I know that it may be a daunting task to get out there, to get your nerves out, and to either speak in front of people or to send your works to someone, and you don't necessarily know what to do if you get a rejection letter or email or anything like that. You just have to be yourself, and just because somebody rejects your writing don't mean that it's not good. It's not a good story, you know. So other than the few pieces that was accepted into publication, do you have any horror stories of pieces that you sent out and you got the dreaded, your work is not for us?
Oh, definitely. Definitely. I actually just recently tried to send out a short story that I called Dollhouse.
Mhm.
And I've sent it to like 5 places now, and each one of them is like, no, this is really weird. We don't want this. But that's okay, I mean, I love when you write things that are so niche that they almost don't have a place on a lot of these major websites. And
Mhm.
I think that even though you do get rejected a lot from like bigger name brands like that it does mean that there is like some teeny tiny website that specializes in what you love, and it has like that perfect audience who are waiting
Mhm.
for that really weird thing you wrote.
Yeah, that's true, because the world is 6 billion, 7 trillion people in it, and everybody can't like the same thing. Not everybody likes the color red. Not everybody loves the number 7. Not everybody loves the Celtics. You know what I mean? People love the Denver Nuggets, who just won the championship, and this is their first time that they ever did it. So there is a place and a time for everybody, and I think if we just apply ourselves and to be ourselves every waking moment of our lives, one day we'll get the recognition that we deserve. You know, um,
Definitely.
with your novels, the 2 novels that you have published out there, did you do it independently, or did you go the traditional route?
I did do it independently. Back in, I want to say it was 2018, June of 2018. Pueblo, Colorado was the closest actual city to where I grew up. And I had been going to self-publishing classes at the local library there. And the teacher mentioned that they were going to be hosting an event rather soon called IdeaCon. And I actually just got an email, and they're doing that again this year. But they wanted local creatives to take part in this IdeaCon. And I had been writing this novel for a long time, and I was on my like 80th draft, my 80,000th edit of it. And I just been kind of dragging my feet about it, thinking about the whole process of querying and getting an agent and all that. And they told me like, hey, if you can get this ready by next month, you can have a booth here and you can sell your work. So I was like, well, all right, I've got a month. I don't have time to do the traditional publishing route. I'm just going to force myself to buckle down and do it and actually publish it, even though I've been so scared to do that
Mhm.
all these years. So that's what happened. I remember uploading it to draft to digital like at midnight the night before the convention, right down to the wire, and the rest is history.
Okay, I know how the process goes about publishing independently, because I got a few works that I published independently, but a lot of people out there in the audience don't know the process and how daunting it can be. Could you just elaborate a bit in how you went about certain steps? You don't have to go through everything, but just paint a picture of how did you go about publishing.
Definitely. So the first part for me was basically rewriting the whole thing from scratch,
Mhm.
and then putting it aside, letting it sit until I'd forgotten what it was supposed to read as and could actually see the errors. Reading through the whole thing yourself, doing the edits yourself. And then comes the daunting part of getting beta readers
Mhm.
who will actually have to read your work. And if it's your first time having someone read your work and critique it, can be very intimidating. But I was very lucky. I had a lot of friends and family who wanted to read this book. And the support they gave me and the feedback they gave me was overwhelmingly positive. It was amazing. So after it had kind of gone through all of that, my aunt had gone to college for English and editing. And so she took big old manuscript on paper and started editing with a red pen. So I would have to take these pieces of paper with all the markups, go back into my computer, put all the edits in. And after a few rounds of editing, it went out. I had a few people buy it and immediately turn around and be like, this really needs more editing, which was true. It was super, super true. I even had a part, I think towards the end of the novel, where I had a character named Jack, and I had started referring to him as Frank, like halfway through with no explanation. So then I hired an editor, which I went to AWP, I think, and I looked around on there, and I looked at a few editor associations and kind of surfed through genre editors, and then eventually settled on people who specialized in LGBTQ editing. Got my editor from there. He went through and edited the entire thing again, got it cut down from about 180,000 words to 160,000, which was definitely necessary. After that, I had a much better, more solid manuscript. So I went to draft2digital.com and I had that manuscript uploaded there. And that sends it out to like Kobo, Barnes and Noble, a couple of library programs, mostly as ebooks. And then I waited a couple of months. I was looking for someone to format my book, and I was having a really hard time with that. So I ended up just buying Atticus, which is a formatting program for self-published authors. And I ended up doing all the formatting myself through that program. And then finally getting the book published in print, which I did that through Barnes and Noble as well as Amazon. Amazon has definitely been my biggest source of income. Like people will actually go there and buy things. Barnes and Noble, I've maybe made like $15 since it's been published, because people would have to specifically request it at Barnes and Noble in order for it to get in. And then my last step, my original covers were okay, but I mean, I just made them in like Canva. So my last step was then to hire a professional illustrator. And I actually found her through Tumblr, and she redid my covers completely. And so I had to go back in and basically relaunch the book through Draft2Digital and to Amazon.
Okay, that's a long process, a long step, and it's necessary because you had to accept the flaws in your works, and that's one of the things that authors can't accept. You know, they can't accept that their project, their baby has flaws, and they don't want somebody else to change anything, you know, because they believe that each of the characters' voice is the way it's supposed to be, and all of the premises in the stories is the way it's supposed to be, and how characters speak is how it's supposed to be spoken, and they don't understand that the subtle nuances of how to approach certain things and how to relay a certain message, and you don't have to use so many words to say, you know, the same thing. So it's good for you that you accepted the somebody else to look at your work and read your work and critique it, because that is something that not everybody is able to accept. And that's why a lot of people have their works sitting on the shelf somewhere on the back of their computer or on the floppy disk somewhere, and they don't want anybody to touch it, because it's like pulling out your hair. You know, you don't want anybody to touch your work. Like I experienced that with one of my first clients. I published his book, and he had his works on a Sidekick, and he sent it to me on notes, and he purposefully sent me 3 chapters at a time. He sent me the later chapters before he sent me, you know, the more recent chapters. And I fell in love with the story, and I wanted more. I don't know if he wanted to do that on purpose to see if I would have been, engaged with the story. And it actually worked because when I got the whole entire book, I was able to edit it from the writer's perspective and not the editor's perspective. And I wanted to keep intact the little subtle nuances of the story and his voice and what he tried to portray in the book, and it worked out pretty well. I used Amazon exclusively with my edits, and I didn't go through different editors or editing software because it's pretty much a one-stop shop nowadays. What year did you publish your first work?
Originally 2018, and then I re-released it, I believe, in 2022.
Right.
No, it was 2020 when I re-released the first one. And then I finally got the second one out in December of 2022.
So the software now, each year, each cycle, they get more, they upgrade more, and it gets easier and easier for persons to publish their works. When I just started, and you can attest to this, you had to read a whole bunch of jargon, and if you don't know the jargon, it's like reading a different language. So you have to be really patient in order to get the margins right and the formatting and everything like that. Because if you make one little mistake, they're not going to accept your manuscript. And it's even harder with smash words. It could be as simple as a period. If you have a period in the wrong place, if you don't have a period in the right place, your work is not getting published. So I think that for you, I have to take off my hat, even though I don't have a hat on, to you, that you are a published author and you did it independently, because it is a daunting task and is not something that anybody should take lightly. The people that's behind the scenes of how books get out there, people take for granted they could just go to Walmart or they can go to Barnes and Nobles and they can pick up a book and they can read it and they say, okay, these characters are nice. It took a lot of work to get those characters on the shelves. But my main point is that it can be a reality if you invest in your time, invest in yourself, invest in your craft like you did, Ms. Anderson. Your works can be out there and it can be in the minds of people. And when your works come out, such as yourself, if you have a trilogy, people will be waiting in the wind, waiting for your work, standing outside, pinching the tent, waiting for your works to come out. But now it's digital. You can get the ebook, but people like to hold a hardcover book and smell the pages as they turn them. So what I would like for you to do for my audience is to name each of your books that is currently published. And if you have a working title of the third book, just let it out and tell the audience where can they find your books.
Perfect. Well, the series itself is called In the Shadow of Fate. Book 1 is The Boy with the Horns, and book 2 is The Girl with the Spear. I'm releasing the third this December, and that is going to be The Man with the Scar. Obviously, Amazon is the easiest place to find it. I have it in hardcover, paperback, as well as ebook format. And you can honestly find it pretty easy if you just search K, the letter, period, Anderson, and then The Boy with the Horns, and they're all linked up together.
Okay, that's great. And me, myself, I really love publishing. I really love the whole process of editing. I like the whole process of creating the covers and doing the edits and things. But it must have been a real experience to collaborate with other editors and illustrators to do your book cover and people to format. So what was that process? I know you mentioned the process, but what was it like to actually have that dialogue with your editor, have the dialogue with the illustrator who did your bookmark, your book cover? Because I know it wasn't just a one draft where you just submitted it and then they did it overnight, and then you say, oh, this is great. It had to have been a few calls and emails to say, okay, can you change this and can you change that?
Definitely. So with the editor that I hired, he did a great job. I don't think that we have like the same method of communication. So I remember when he sent me my edits, it was the whole thing at once. Like I didn't get a few chapters at a time. It was the whole manuscript. And I remember opening the document and just seeing like walls of red text and immediately being like, I don't even want to look at this. And I actually got really angry looking through it and seeing all these parts where he was like, why does this need to be included? Why would this happen? Like, this is what people are going to assume when you read this. And I was like, what does this guy know? Like, I've been working on this for years.
Yeah.
And like, of course he would say that, like, because of XYZ that I never actually wrote down in the book. And so at first I feel like I gave a lot of pushback. Because in my mind, like every tiny little interaction was a part of the story and the characters and, but that kill your darlings rule really came up because it was like, I know you love this scene, but it doesn't move the plot along. It doesn't reveal anything about the character that we didn't already know. Little things like that, where just cutting out all this extra fluff that as the author, I was like, but I love the fluff. I love this so much. He was right. He was definitely right in that so much of this needed to be cut. And of course, as the author, you have to find that line for pushback. For example, he recommended me taking out all of my alien language that I had carefully crafted. And I remember calling my sister and complaining about it. And when I told her that, she was like, you can't, do not take out the alien language parts because they are so visceral and real. And like, you need to keep them in. And so I talked to a couple more of my beta editors, and they said the same thing, like, no, because you start to learn these pieces of language and you start to see the importance of this native language, especially because in the series, it's kind of a secret to off-worlders. So as my main character is more integrated into their culture and their society and becomes a part of their family, being able to learn this language that isn't allowed to off-worlders becomes a really big part of his character, because now he's one of them. He's part of their family. But positive interactions with my illustrator, I think I sent her, first of all, an inquiry like, hey, do you do covers? I've seen your illustrations and they're amazing. And she was like, well, maybe. What did you have in mind? And I sent her like this 4-page email, like, I want him looking like slightly to the left, and there should be like a curl in the wind, and I need like his hand here, and all this specific stuff, because I had just had this like perfect picture in my mind. And she threw back a couple of questions and asked me to find like some color palettes that I liked from her previous illustrations, which was easy peasy because I love all her stuff. But yeah, it was, I think our email chain got to be like 60 emails long. But it was so engaging because then she sends me this rough sketch. And I was like, you like pulled it directly out of my mind. Like, this is exactly what I imagined. So
the email change was necessary because you actually put in her mind what you wanted, and a true artist will draw from that. And that's a beautiful, beautiful relationship.
Definitely. Yeah. So it was really amazing. But I think the big part of that is being able to communicate with the people you work with. Because like with my editor, just being like, I don't think I want to do this again, wasn't helpful. I'm sure that if I had been like, hey, can we look at this, this, and this, it would have been better. And I've definitely learned that since with my editor, just like having that open communication and letting people put their hands on your baby, basically.
Yeah, and that is great. And we all, and that's a great analogy because I'm a parent, and it was really difficult for me to bring my kids to a babysitter, because you don't know where they've been and if they're crazy, and you don't want your babies to be hurt. And in this
Yep.
instance, it's your words, because your words are a part of you, because you invested your time and you sat there and you thought about every waking moment, every sentence, every paragraph, every character was what was thought about to the nth degree. And for somebody to just come in and like, nope, that's not it. That's not the way it's going to be. And it's great if you can sit there and take it, but like you said, at first glance, you got offended, but once it all sunk in, you was able to accept the critique and move forward. So, but one question I have, because you didn't finish, did you change the alien language, or did
I
you?
didn't.
You
I
didn't.
kept that one in, and I
Okay.
think it was the right choice.
Okay.
Because of just what it ended up meaning. And
Mhm.
now that I'm doing merchandise for my book, like some of the sayings are things that are going on the merchandise in the alien language. So I think when you really, really know that line where to accept critique and push
Mhm.
back
Mhm.
is super important.
Okay. So did you have that dialogue with your editor to explain to the editor about each of the characters, the little subtle nuances, their flaws, their goals, and things of that nature, before you allow that person to edit your work? Or do you just email it to them and just, throw caution to the wind and let them just have at it?
That is kind of what ended up happening. And I do regret that. I wish I had been a little more cautious and more explanatory.
Mhm.
Um, with my second book, that's definitely how it was. It was, here's the character, here's their goals, here's what I need my audience to get out of this. When you read this passage, is this what you get out of this?
Mhm.
Leaving tons of notes all over my manuscript, like, is this how this comes across? Is this, and just having much more communication, so that my goals as the author were clear.
Mhm.
Because when you just shove the whole manuscript and say, okay, have at it, um,
Mhm.
of course they're gonna do their very best,
Yeah.
but how are you supposed to know where the story is supposed to go, the emotions it's supposed to make you feel, without the author communicating with you? Otherwise, it's just what you're reading, and you're reading a fundamentally flawed copy. That's why you need to edit it.
Yeah, that's great. And I'm with you. I'm here. I'm a writer, and we are alumni of Full Sail University, and I'm definitely glad that I went on that journey. Could you, as my guest of the show, convey that journey that you went through of going to college for your to further your craft, to hone your craft?
Definitely. If you're a person and you've mentioned wanting to go to college for something creative, you've probably had someone tell you that that is a huge waste of your money and that you will be in debt forever for nothing. But the reality of it is, when I started college, I went to a local college, and I was just going to get like an English degree because that was as close as I figured I could come to my passion and my craft without wasting my money. And I remember walking into the creative writing class, and we all sit down, and the professor looked at all of us and he said, okay, well, none of you are ever going to be published authors. You probably don't want to be here, but let's see what we can do. And just that feeling of, all right, this is this is what it has to offer. It was such a different experience when I actually went to a college for creatives, because fundamentally that is what Full Sail is. It's a creative
Mhm.
college.
Mhm.
And having professors who are in the industry and who are fellow creatives, and having classmates that are fellow creatives who are excited for you, who can offer you feedback, who love to read and write and critique films and things like that. It is such a different experience, and it is a perfect atmosphere to cultivate your craft and experience. And I'm really, really, really glad I did it. And honestly, I do not care at this point if I am in debt for the rest of my life, but I don't think I will be. um, so if you're thinking about it, I say do it. I started because I was stuck in the process with my second book. I felt like I had learned a lot on my own, but that I'd plateaued. I'd reached a point where without a mentor, without guidance, like that was what I was going to learn on my own. So I decided I needed something, and that's what drove me to start at Full Sail. And I finished my book while I was there, broke through that plateau. So if you feel like you've come to a place where you have elevated your craft as far as you can, being self-taught, the sky's the limit. You can take your degree and just totally break through that ceiling and learn so much more and come to love your craft even more than you already do.
Mhm. That is 100%. That's how I felt. And for the audience out there, listen to my program in this episode. In particular, invest in yourself. You know, whatever you want to do, whatever you want to create, invest in yourself, because that is the greatest thing that you can ever do in your life. You know, you can take other people's opinions, but you have to be careful what critique that you get, because sometimes somebody who don't understand what your ambitions are, they may discourage you for reaching for your goal, because it may sound far-fetched to them, because they don't share your excitement, they don't share your ambitions. So you gotta, you know, pick and choose what information you let people know about what your agenda is, and you have to try to associate yourself with other creatives, other people that are in the same avenue as you, that may and will help you in the walk. That's why it was so important for you, Ms. Anderson, to go to a school like Full Sail, because there was a lot of other creatives out there that has the same kind of drive as you and the passion as you for creators, and they gave you the right push down the road that you continue on. And I guarantee you that every critique, every class, every word of wisdom, or word of an opinion that you received while you was in a Full Sail, it was invaluable for you. So I want to convey to the audience that you are your biggest fan, yes, but there are other people out there can help you along the way to be the best version of yourself. And on that note, Ms. Anderson, this was a pleasure, because I got to interview somebody who's an author, and we got to talk shop during our interview. And I want to let everybody know that Creative Corner is a place in your heart and in your mind that you can be the best version of yourself. And on that note, I bid you adieu. And until next time, on the next episode of Creative Corner, this is Miss Anderson, and I thank you.
Thank you, James. This has been awesome. Bye.
Take care.
You too.